Anyway, welcome to our final session for this 2-day symposium. And this one is like one of the most important to me because I am a dev designer. And I go to the next slide, please. Okay. So for this session, we go up. For this session, we are going to talk about rethinking accessibility through the lens of dev designer. So we have Monse and me in the room. We are going to introduce ourselves, but then for now, this is what the subject is about for this session. And I know that some of you were in the past meeting, but I just want to remind people of what Future Vision is about. Future Vision is a 2-day virtual symposium that brings industry professionals together to discuss topics about equity, diversity, and inclusion, their importance relative to the health of the industry, and develop tools necessary to promote equity in the profession. That's what Future Vision is. And next slide. And for this year, we chose that term elevate and how they elevate diversity, equity, inclusion to no hate. And what will it get us? What will it take us to get there? So do this conversation there, we are going to have accessibility. We are also hoping that it will help drive the conversation about the many different ways we can help our design through the lens of to dev design. All right, and next slide. And before I go any further, I want time to thank our sponsors, Huffman Construction, APSIS, PIA, and later this afternoon, we have the reception, the evening reception happening at the DLR group. So they are going to sponsor it. And if you can attend, please feel free to join us at 4:30 p.m. All right. And next slide.
I was busy typing.
Yeah.
Less.
That's fine. So one thing is that right now, Monse, Hannah, and myself, we live in Oregon, and we really want to do Island Acknowledgement, which is very important. So we would like to acknowledge the many tribes and bands who call Oregon their ancestral territory, including Bonus Paiute, Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lowell, Umke, and Siuslaw, Confederated Tribes of Cow Creek, Lowell Band of Umka, Confederated Tribes of Ground Run, Confederated Tribes of Cities Indian, Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, Confederated Tribes of Umatilla Indian Reservation, Coquille Tribe, and Klamath Tribe, and honor the ongoing relationship between the land, plants, animals, and people indigenous to this place we now call Oregon. We recognize the continued sovereignty of the 9 federally recognized tribes who have ties to this place and thank them for continuing to teach us how we might all be here together. Okay, thank you. And before we go any further, I want to say, as chair of the Committee on Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion for AIO, I really like to read our community agreement because it kind of laid down the platform about how we share this space. So our first community agreement is engage to understand, give space and grasp. Stories style, lessons are shared. Acknowledge your backgrounds and experiences. Respectfully challenge, it is not personal. Lean into discomfort, examine the past, look to the future, present with intent and attention to impact, expect and accept non-closure. So thank you, that's our community agreement. And before we get started, I want to let people know that we have a SL interpreter in the room, like you can see right now. So if you need accommodation, please try to pin them on your screen, whatever way you know how to handle the technology, because I am not really good at it. But yeah, and I'm before I give Anna the mic, I'm going to let Heather say afterward. Heather.
Hello. Hi. I'm Heather Wilson. I'm the Executive Vice President and CEO for AIA Oregon. I'm really happy for this presentation and these past 2 days of Future Vision, which have been really expansive and thoughtful programming that Mohammed and the COEDI committee worked very hard to pull together. So thank you very much. I want to thank all of our sponsors again and say we do have some great upcoming events for the chapter. If you could check out aiaoregon.org, you can find out about our upcoming golf tournaments, design awards presentations. Call for design awards and professional achievement awards are open right now. And we'll be looking for anyone to join us. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, hwilson@aiaoregon.org. I'll put it in the chat as well. And with that, I'll turn it back over to our presenters today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Heather and Mohammed. So we'll go ahead and get started. Everybody can see everyone, right? Okay, so what I want to do first is just quickly remind you that if you have any access needs that you'd like us to know about, you can chat to me or to everyone. Just let us know. Slide descriptions, and that's not just if you're low vision or blind. Maybe you're about to hop in the car and you won't be staring at the screen. And yes, to the point about the pins, I think we're having some issues with that. So we'll make sure this works for the presentation. The recording might not have everything pinned the way you wanted to, but as long as you have what you need on the screen, that's what we're looking for right now. Just let me know if we need to slow down or repeat things. If you have questions, I want to highly encourage people to be in the chat. If you've ever been at a presentation where I'm in the audience, I like to be an active listener and say amazing or give stars or hearts when I hear something I like. I really encourage you to do that so we know that you're listening, so we can respond. And if you're curious about something, ask a question. We'll try to come back to it. We will also have time for Q&A at the end. Also, working with interpreters, we can talk a little bit more about this. And I need to probably practice what I preach, but speak slowly. Let's make sure that we give time for clarifications, especially when we're working with interpreters. Know that there's a little bit of a lag, right? So that's something that when we're working with folks who are deaf, who are using ASL interpreters, we just kind of, there are new norms that we adopt. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So firstly, I'm Hannah Silver. I work at Holst Architecture. My role is called Inclusive Design Facilitator. If that means nothing to you, it's because I totally made it up. It's kind of a combination of doing community engagement and then looking at accessible and inclusive design. I love to teach. I love to facilitate. I also work on stuff like our B Corps certification, which is very exciting, our Just label, and just sort of general equity within the firm, what we're doing to be good stewards of the work that we do and our teams that we're on in our community. So I use she, her pronouns, and then I'm going to pass it to, we'll go to Monse first, and then Mohammed. Let's just start with your names, your pronouns, where you work, what role you have, and then let's go with where did you grow up? And we'll start there and then we'll pass it back. Monse, you can go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Hannah and Mohammed, for having me here and allowing me to share my experience with everyone as a group. I'm just so excited. So first of all, my name is Monse Fonseca, and this is my sign name, M at the mouth. And my pronouns are she, her. I do work here at Holst as an architecture, and my role is a designer, actually.
Yeah. So actually, I'm Mohammed. Different from Monse, I don't assign much. I have been trying to read lips because I did speech therapy when I was younger. Yeah, but still, I still identify as a deaf person because that's who I am, and it's also part of me. So my pronouns are he and him. Yeah, and I am a designer at Zimol Consul Frasca. Yeah, I mean, yes, that's like the first question. So I don't know if I should go to the next one. Like,
Yeah.
where did I grow up?
Yeah.
So I was born in Senegal and moved to Portland 10 years ago. And I have been living between Oregon and South Carolina between now and then. Yeah, and I went to school at Portland State University for college. And then after undergrad, I went to Clemson University in South Carolina. Really, I was in a really interesting program, you know. Yeah, I guess that's kind of like the answer to the first question.
Yeah. Thanks, Mohammed. We'll go back to Monse then to fill in. Tell us, so I know that you didn't grow up in the US either. Tell us how you sort of ended up in Portland, and let's talk a little bit about the school experience. What was it like to be in architecture school at Portland State, and what did Portland State do for both of you to be able to make architecture education accessible?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Mexico, and I moved to the United States when I was 13. And so I went through middle school and high school at a deaf school in the States, and that's how I learned ASL and a sign language. Before that, when I was in Mexico, I used Mexican sign language SLM, and then had to learn another language here in America. I also took speech therapy, both Spanish and English, as I grew up, and that was quite a challenge for me because English is not my natural first language, and I'm not a first language English speaker. But I graduated high school in the state, and I attended a community college, took several classes there, and then I worked on a degree with humanitarianism and architecture design. And at the same time, when I was finished with the community college and high school at the same time, I graduated and went on to university, where I studied an undergraduate and graduate program. And that I finished from 2009 to 21. And so I've been at Holst for 2 years, and I've
Yeah, so Monse, I think I always talk about my school, but Anna was kind of like asking like what our experience was in college, and I know that you and me we went to Portland State University together, and we graduated the same year, which is pretty awesome, right? And at the same time, like both of us, we kind of had the same need for accommodation in the studio. But it was like a different because for me, and I feel like in terms of accessibility, like I always had a cord or a type well captioner on my side. And then like a studio would start from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. and I would have the captioner available. And then after 5 p.m., well, I mean, they aren't here anymore. So I kind of had to try to figure out how to do certain things, like asking questions around the studio. Yeah, and I will really let Monse talk about her experience was in terms of accessibility. But that's how it was for me, kind of like having captioner in the classroom.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. We both went to the same college, but we did have different accommodations because I did require an ASL interpreter to be placed in my classes. And that was quite a different experience, learning the new vocabulary in these classes and learning the signs to those and getting along with that. But at the same time, I had different interpreters for my classes, also from 1 to 5, like you mentioned. Once I did not have interpreters in the class, like for studio work, for example, if I were going to work on a project and I was by myself without an interpreter, I had to figure out what to do. So what I would do to communicate without the interpreter is I would bring my own paper and pen. I could get something cheap from the store, and I would make like small little note cards I would cut into square pieces where I could use to write back and forth with people, or like hold up flashcards with little messages on it if I had a common message I might use frequently. But yeah, writing back and forth. But yeah, it made me feel quite alone at times because there were not many people on campus who knew sign language. Not many people near me to sign at all, so it wasn't easy to provide accommodations for me if I was there without an interpreter. So what that meant was anytime there was not an interpreter and no one who knew sign language, there was a lot of writing back and forth. When I went out, I would participate in a lot of games and events on campus. But again, I felt a little bit like I was missing out because of that lack of communication. So I had to learn how to navigate through all of that and advocate for myself to get my needs met for the several years that I was in school.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I feel like at the end of the day, you know, you and me, we kind of had a different experience in terms of how accommodation will provide to us. But then also it was like the summer process, like after 5 p.m., like which is studio time, you always need to have that accommodation. You need the interpreter or the captioner present, but you know, it is not here. So you have to figure out a way to kind of find your own way to communicate and kind of catch up with everybody and try to make sure that you are still on the same page like everyone. And I feel like that's really the real challenge that happen when it comes to, you know, having accommodation in studio. Yeah, that's the part. And I would also add that sometimes I feel like when it comes to accommodation, like when we are doing reviews, sometimes you need to have the interpreter ready to go. But then it depends on, you know, who the professor is and how much they are willing to be involved into the success of the student. Like how much are they going to make sure that the accommodation is here, and always remembering that there is a deaf student in the classroom. So when they are talking, making sure that the student is included. Yeah, and then those are also, you know, part of the challenge that we're coming with it. But that's how it was on my end, and I don't really know about Monty, like how the experience was for her in general, in terms of how the professor really communicating and things.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, well, we know confidently that many disabled folks or deaf folks are working twice as hard, right, to get the same amount of information as everybody else, which can be exhausting. So I do want to just acknowledge that. I mean, to be where you're at in your careers is, you know, a huge feat. And I think that Monse had said to me, like, it was even, you know, not a guarantee that you would even go to college at all, right? So I'd love to just take a step back and ask, when did you first know you wanted to be in architecture? And we can start with Monse again.
Yeah, I think when I was young, when I was a child, I drew a lot. And what I drew was houses and neighborhood type things. And maybe I would design furniture and bedrooms and a dining room table. I remember a lot of that. I was interested. I drew a lot of like outdoor scenes, like waterscape with trees, landscaping with birds and different wildlife. And so there was a lot of that I enjoyed drawing. And I've kept all of those books with me as I've grown up and into my adulthood. So I can remember those specific type drawings and things like it was yesterday. And that was something I experienced in the deaf school in the States, whereas I got to sit across from somebody like my counselor. And I remember a memory of my counselor asking me what I wanted to do after high school, and did I want to go to college, and what did I want to be. I met with this counselor every year, and every year I gave her the same answer, that I wanted to go into this field. But when I got to college, this program didn't offer exactly what I wanted, so I decided to get into an internship, and I studied humanistic arts. And at the one time, I had to write in English and do research and studies about deaf culture and that kind of topic. And it really was shocking what I found, which that 90% of deaf children had never gone to a school and experienced all of what I get to experience in the world. They're very isolated and limited. and that really shook me, and it made me realize that's when I decided I just wanted to go and pursue more and get more education. And that's when I chose the university that I chose, and I was able to study and understand more and learn about design and understand where different people, what the, how to design spaces to make people feel comfortable and important and noticed when they're seated in places.
That's awesome. I just wanted to say that I like where there's a headphones, not because I heard, but because I wear them to kind of cancel the background noise that's happening around, because I don't really know if there is sound happening outside or not. So I try to be soft really. So that's why I wear this. But overall, I don't know. I mean, for me, growing up, I mean, it's like I grew up around a community where they don't ever know what deafness is, right? Because it's like okay, there's a deaf person, but like who are you, and like how do we communicate with you now? I felt like for me that was like the first step, like my family, and after that my surrounding, like how do I navigate this this new step, like being deaf and then being around people who communicate all the time, and I can understand them really. So like, how do I navigate with this? So I didn't really know. And I mean, I had to go back to school and kind of start to grade lower. And like my friend, the one I had before I became deaf, I mean, I didn't really talk about how I became deaf, but I had meningitis when I was 11. So that's how I lost my hearing. And I feel like it's nice to talk about it now, just in case I don't confuse people. So I had meningitis and then became deaf at 11 years old. So I couldn't hear before. So when I became deaf, I think the challenge at first was, to communicate. But then 1 year after that, I tried to go back to school. But what happened is that I had to start 2 grade lower. And then like you can imagine, like most of the classmates I had before, they were 2 grade higher up. So that was just a challenge for me at the beginning. But like, you have friends that are at another level now. They are making new friends. But now I'm supposed to be at another level now and make new friends again. So like start from zero. But I embraced it. Anyway, so that's, really the story started. And then after that, I mean, I kept up with it, the work in school, kind of being the same and going to people and asking questions and stuff. So before I finished high school, I was kind of wondering like what I wanted to do. So the thing is, architecture at the time, I'm gonna be honest, wasn't in the perspective really, because there are a lot of things I like to do. Like I love math, I love physics, chemistry, and I love to draw at the same time. And I'm fortunate that I was in a program in school really those subjects were offered to me to kind of allow me to explore things. So I decided that, okay, I want to do something really, those things could come together. Like my love for math and science and the drawing. And what is funny is that at the same time when I was thinking about it, I ended up moving to the United States. That was in 2013. And then, so when I moved out here, I went to kind of, visit the city and stuff. I ended up visiting a building in Portland. That was, I mean, a high rise. So I was standing at the top of that high rise, and there was a big window. And standing on that window, I could see the city of Portland and the bridge, the car, and the building. And so I told myself, okay, human beings build this and put it together, like put a city together. So, that's the kind of things I really want to do myself. So that's when I started that, I'm going to go to Portland State and do architecture. Yeah, I mean, it just came naturally, but it was kind of like after high school, not early on.
Yeah, these are incredible stories. I mean, just to hear like the long journey to get to where you are. And, Mohammed framed this conversation with, how can we take DEI to new heights? So I hope that you're all listening, because the next question I think is really important is to ask, what have your firms done for you that make it possible for you to be in architecture? So I want to just highlight, like, what are those day-to-day things that people are doing to ensure that this is a welcoming environment and, not just for deaf people, but really broadly inclusive. What are we doing that's good? And we can talk more about what else we can do, right? But let's start with the positives. Either of you can jump in.
I say go first. Or you want me to go? I mean,
Sure. Okay. Sure. I can talk about this first. After graduation, our high school graduation, when I was trying to figure out what to do, I thought about all the issues with interpreting and accommodations and who was willing to advocate for me and how to advocate for myself as I went along. And I was at the time working with a team of interpreters, and I would be placed with a client who we might have an event to plan, and there would be work put an interpreter with me, whether they my company provided it or there was someone there by volunteer. But it was very nice to have that accommodation provided. This year, I've noticed there's been some changes to the person who provides accommodation and getting those interpreters there for me, but it was just really this team and being able to come up with a schedule that we can all access and write down what events are going on, where and when, how we're going to meet, and get an interpreter scheduled for each of those things. So it's nice to have that schedule there. And then I can go look and say, oh, this event is happening at this day and time. And I see that there's been an interpreter confirmed for that. That's really exciting. And that felt really good to me to have a team that I worked with that would create such a cool concept to help make accommodations for me to get along great in the workspace. It's been so nice because remember I mentioned a lot of paper and pen and back and forth writing with people to communicate in the past. That has been greatly reduced now because of work providing accommodations such as the interpreter. So that's just been wonderful. If I don't have that, there's also an iPad that can be used. Like I might be going outside, I can get Wi-Fi set up to that, and I'm able to pull up that tablet with the interpreter, and it's just amazing to me. I can just have a quick last minute spur of the moment conversation with somebody, and it just makes it so much easier for me at my job and therefore less stressful.
that's awesome. I mean, I think pen and paper is the way, I started before we had so much technology now. So I think it's still a great tool to use pen and paper, and it's still going to be here. So yeah, I love it. And I don't really have an issue using pen and paper. But anyway, I think for me, I mean, I had like an internship first that was as a human designer. And then what would happen is that whenever I come to the office in the morning, like the principal, I mean, it was a small firm. That was back when I was living in Charleston. So there were only people like myself, and I was an intern at the time. So when we were starting in the morning, like he would bring everybody, including myself, to just sit down and talk about how we were going to start the day. But honestly, the way he did is like he always had his iPad on, and he made sure that, either I had my screen for caption or he would have his notebook and the pencil ready to just sketch as we go through the conversation. So he was kind of making me feel welcome and being part of the group, which was really important. And right now I am not working with him, but it was like the first person that really touched me in terms of how accommodation should be provided in the workplace. And that was great. And then I mean, when I started working as a chef, it was like a post-COVID, so it's been like almost 2 years now. So what is funny is that I have been working online mostly and coming to the office sometimes. So when I come to the office in the morning, it is still the same thing, kind of meeting with the design principal, going over things and how they are going to be run. And one thing that is nice is that I work with the people who ask me to put together a list about what is working and what is not working before every single meeting. So that's why we are able to communicate, right? Because architecture at the end of the day, it's a big world. And the other challenge is that I am in a pretty big firm, right? So kind of having people who are able to be here and make sure that I am in the room and my question and answer is pretty important, and they are doing it. And well, regarding the virtual part, I feel like we have a lot of virtual meeting. So one thing that, my firm is making sure happen is that every single meeting is going to have captioning. And that's something we have discussed before I was hired. So it is very important. And right now, that's one of the positive thing that they are doing. And yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, that's great. And, some of these things are huge takeaways for, I would say, anyone who's disabled or deaf, but really anybody, right? Is that like the kind of feedback loop of what is working for you? What can we do to support you? And especially when you're new in architecture, we know those first, few years can be a lot. You're learning so much technical information, figuring out where you fit in on teams. There's a huge learning curve. So I think that cycle of just like asking what you can do to help and understanding that, if you're a firm leader or sort of a manager, that there's equity is an uphill battle in many ways, right? That it's not necessarily easy because the system we're working within has been set up really to exclude a lot of people for whom there are differences or different needs, but that has historically not served us, right? We want a diverse profession because we want to be designing in ways that support the whole population, right? And we can't do that if we don't represent the population. So we're going to just do a little, very, very brief intro to deaf culture, but we don't have a lot of time for that. So I'll encourage you all to come to the happy hour tonight, and then you can ask us all about it so that we can get to our presentation about deaf space and really talk about design, because we're all interested in that, right? So Montse, can you just give us a very brief intro, maybe 1 minute, of what it means for there to be a deaf culture?
Yes, deaf culture is so rich and so much history with deaf people. I would definitely love to be able to go into greater detail with it, but if I could sum it up, I would say it's most important to know a little bit about the history and the struggles of oppression for all deaf people and the community in general. For deaf people who are deaf blind, low vision, hard of hearing, it can really just be heartbreaking how people were not provided with accommodations or accessibility whatsoever all throughout the world for many, many years. And when you think about deaf culture, they definitely do have their own way of their own language, their own way of learning new language, of socializing with each other. It's definitely our language, which is the heart of our culture, because it's such a beautiful, expressive language, incorporates movement, body action. It's real in space, a beautiful 3D language. So I have nothing negative to say about it. It's a part of who I am. It's a part of my identity. I have pride about being a deaf person and looking at who I am and what I've been able to do. And there's two different types of ways of describing deaf. You have deaf, which is little d deaf, and then you have capital D deaf. So when someone describes themselves and self-identifies as capital D deaf, it means they grew up in the deaf community, they grew up communicating in American Sign Language. It's their heritage, it's their pride, it's a part of their soul, it's who they are. But when you refer to a deaf person who has what we call lower D deaf, this is someone who's maybe is deaf, but they haven't been exposed to the richness that comes along with living the deaf life, the true deaf experience and deaf culture. So it's important to ask somebody when you meet a deaf person what their identity is, how they see themselves. I definitely define as a capital D deaf person. And everything about the deaf culture is just truly amazing. The community is such a small world, a big world and a small world, if you will. Everyone knows each other. There's such connection amongst deaf people. The greatest thing about it is how we inspire each other and knowing that we can do anything we want. There is no limit. If you want to do it, you can do it. You want to be an architect? Go for it. There's deaf doctors. You can be a doctor if you want. So don't ever let anyone tell you there's something you can't do. And that's what's just really the heart of it, and how within the deaf community and deaf culture, we support each other on these points. We encourage each other. If someone makes someone feel lesser than, we are there for each other to explain, no, you can do it. We can do anything we want to do. So again, deaf people have a very rich and just fascinating history. And I would love to talk to you more about this later if anyone's interested.
Yeah. Mohammed, you have something added quickly?
Yeah, Anna. You want me to, or
Oh, you have
I
your
will-
hand up.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Monse, thank you for putting it in such a nice, positive way, just the way everybody in this room need to hear it. And then one thing I want to say is that, yeah, I have been learning ISL for a while, but then like I was I would prefer more toward reading lips because when I was going, like I said, didn't have that community around me. So like reading lips was the only way I could communicate. And then that grew along for more than 10 years. And then it was kind of harder to shift, but still I am learning a lot of ISL. It's just like not the first way I use it to communicate, usually because I use my lips more. But what is nice about everything you said is I like how you talk about identity and pride and how it is in your soul and part of who you are. And that's how I feel. And I don't know how the world see it, but I wish the world would kind of understand it just the way you put it together. Yeah, and it's also like a big word in itself, but like living in a small world because the world is small, but the deaf community at the end of the day, when you look at it, I feel like the richness in it is a big richness, like it is vast, and like there are a lot of identity around it, people from all walks. So they share that thing, which is being deaf around a world that is, I don't know how to say it, but like when you look at the deaf experience and then you look at the world, it's like two different things. Like how do you take this small community and put it inside this small world? But then when you try to compare them, it's like the deaf experience is so big, right? So yeah, that's how I'm trying to say it. Like it's like bigger than the world. That's what I want to say. Yeah, I want to say that the deaf experience is bigger than the world in general, like how we look at it. For me, that's what it is, And when you say you are deaf with a capital letter, I feel like that's what it means. Because you were saying all those things that, I feel related to, which are true. Like you can do anything. And when you think about it that way, that means whatever you dreamed are, they are kind of bigger than the world. So yeah, that's at last, at the end of the day, I like to think that for you and me, that's kind of what helps us navigate this world because we don't want to say the world is small. No, it is not, it is big. But then when we look at it, we feel like, okay, we can do better than what is available to us, Yeah, so that's how I would put it together, just adding to what she was saying.
Yeah, definitely. That's all great. And I saw like some great comments and questions, and we can come back to that at the end. We're going to shift gears a little bit and have Monse do a little introduction to deaf space and how we design spaces to support deaf folks. Monse will keep an eye on the clock for about 10 minutes intro. So I know this is very brief. We have a lot to cover. We're also going to do a little ASL lesson. So we've got a lot packed in here today, so stick with us. So Monse, you can go ahead and share your slides and take it away.
Sure, definitely. Let me share my screen one moment. All right, can everybody see? Great, okay. So I'm gonna explain a little bit before we get going on this PowerPoint that Deafscapes is how we create an area for individuals, deaf individuals. Okay, let me back up. At Gallaudet University, there was a study with a person by the name of Bauman, and they studied the architectural design of spaces for deaf individuals, and they were trying to figure out how to include that design and architecture so that everything would be visually open and easy for others to deaf people to get along in. And so they had designed this outdoor area called this Deafscape that we can use as designers here. I'm going to explain more in a moment. So there's got several different policies on how and where to make this space work for us. So first of all, deaf space is the proximity and the distance between two or more signers' spaces around them, which we need more of. So there's different designs, and you can look at this picture to show how we could accommodate deaf individuals, whether it's in a classroom for students, whether it's in a presentation area for professionals. Signing uses a lot of space around the body as well as facial expressions. So it's very important to have open areas or windows we can see through, comfortable seating spaces that allow individuals and signers to have plenty of elbow room to sign, and so they don't feel cramped. Sensory reach. So this is different ways that we can design for deaf and signing individuals, deaf, blind, etc., to have a way to, well, let me show you how we approach this. So this is important for deaf's everyday lives, that we have a large visual space around us so that we can know what's going on in our peripheral vision. And we do that through this space so that we can see through areas. We can make sure that we know what's happening in the next room or outside in the hallway, and we're not locked off to, if the design is very closed off, and anytime a door is closed, we don't know what's going on around us because we don't hear that like you do. So it's very nice to be able to see these open spaces in person so that we can know what's going on in the next room, down the hallway, etc. So there's examples of different spaces where maybe you go down a hallway and there might be some reflective glass so that if a deaf person approaches that area and there's somebody coming up behind them, they can see who's coming behind them. Or if we're coming to an L shape in a corridor and there's a person walking in one direction and the other person is walking to meet them, they don't kind of bump into each other because there's some mirrors and they can each see each other coming. Maybe in an elevator, we have windowed elevators with 360-degree views so that we can see each other. Again, so just visibility. Next one is mobility and proximity. So that again means, suppose there's like two deaf or more than two deaf are walking and having a conversation in a space at the same time. They need enough space to look at each other and see what the other person is saying, whether that is inside a building, in a room, going down a hallway, or outside in an outdoor space. So I'm going to pause for a moment and show you some examples you can see right here in these photos. Oftentimes, designs might have a space that limits deaf people. Maybe there's a person standing at the bottom of the stairs and someone in an elevated space. So one person is having to look down, the other one's having to crane their neck and get a neck ache just to see each other. So it's important to have people standing at eye level. It's important to have a space that is open, so and maybe in more of a U shape or semicircled area shape where people can stand and see each other all the way around instead of having to walk over and crane their neck again to see. Again, if there's a room that kind of goes off into a corner, then people are limited as to their visual field and what they can see. But if we've got a U-shaped or a curved room, then there's more visibility. I know this is something, I know that, I think these are great designs, but think about this, whereas you have a door and there's a corridor where there's a door and then a little open space and then another door. It might be shocking as a deaf person to walk up and have a conversation with someone in front of a swinging door and not know that someone else has just gone through that door and the door slams in their face. So just have better designs for doors and going in and out of spaces. Also, if you are walking and outside, keep in mind of maybe rows of trees being a blocker, or maybe pillars, rows of pillars blocking a deaf person's vision. That's something to consider when making designs to keep the area open. Light and color. So these are two very different aspects that are important when designing to make things deaf friendly. Here are some examples of color we can use that can help the eye to adjust visually imagine watching someone sign all day, every day. Your eyes can get easily tired. So picking a color that makes the deaf person able to see conversation easily without exhausting them is important, like the blues and greens. Also, it's important whenever you're thinking of a ceiling to have the appropriate height on the ceiling so that you don't feel too closed in when you are talking, with maybe the light fixtures kind of coming in low and creating shadows that make it harder for a deaf individual to see what's being signed. We need to have light coming in, like some natural light coming in from not just overhead, but from the sides, so that there are clearly visible signs and no shadows that might unintentionally create some frustration or confusion there. Our next topic is acoustic and electromagnetic interference. And maybe you're thinking, well, these are words that relate to hearing. How does this relate to deaf people? Well, I'll tell you, many deaf do have devices that can help them hear, such as a hearing aid or a cochlear implant. So we need to consider how the designs that we put together might affect them. For example, putting in an acoustic panel into hallways or rooms that might dampen sound that might be a distraction for deaf individuals, to kind of help them to lower that outside distractive type audio noise so that they can focus on what's in front of them. There's all of these different things right here and pictures that kind of demonstrate that. But if we can think about all of the policies that I've mentioned up until now, it's important to keep all of these in mind when you are designing spaces to make sure that they do accommodate deaf individuals in a way that makes communication easy and friendly. And all right. Any questions about this? Or Mohammed, anything you'd like to say?
Oh, yeah, I don't have a question. I just wanted to, talk about it. There's a slide, like, Monty, I was with you when we kind of started this earlier back in April during that presentation we had, which is pretty awesome. And I feel like more people in the architecture and urban design community, need to see these graphics a little more. And then so because I feel like it's important. And then one example that I feel like you and me touched base on at first, like when we were talking about our studio space, like you remember we went to Portland State University, but just looking at the way the studio was set up, like it was not really helpful to us to kind of help us with, the communication part, because I feel like, if that part was improved a little bit about how the space was really designed, it will improve communication factor beyond 50% at last. But yeah, you always have this single desk. So yeah, it's, an opportunity for architect to think about how we really design space. And then the other thing is like, I'm thinking about our street, by example, like you look at Portland and you were showing a slide where, you can look at how it is important to design for the deaf when you are kind of manipulating the sidewalk. And then when you navigate Portland, a lot of times you see bike racks like everywhere. Are those helpful at all? We don't know. Sometimes they might be an impediment for communication between two deaf people, right? So that's the other thing. Like sometimes, we don't really think about those little changes, and they are really very important, and they go a long way. And in terms of, let's say, in terms of internal space for people to meet, I feel like when it comes to architecture, we also always need to challenge the structure of the building a lot. Like I just as an experience, like this week I was in a meeting and there is a space in the building that is supposed to be some kind of a council chamber. So how council chamber are. They are kind of like auditorium where you have people in front of you and you come and you sit. But what was funny is that there was a column that was kind of standing in the middle of the room. And I was thinking about it like, okay, if I come to the meeting, right, I am going to end up sitting at the back of the room, right? So if that column is heard in front of me, I would not really be able to see the speaker. So those are kind of like the part where, we need to push architect we need to push architects to look a little bit more about how they design space. And honestly, I love data graphics, and I think there should be a better way for us to kind of share it with the broader community. So just thank you for sharing it. And I hope everybody on the call is, feeling the same way as I do.
Yes, that's so great. Thank you for what you've shared. And we really do need to think ahead and really plan and consider all of these accommodations in our future designs down the line, because we now, with this knowledge, do much better than
yes.
So I can talk more about deaf space and deaf culture and ASL resources, but they're all right here.
Yeah.
Take a picture of this QR code, then you can, on your own time, read up some more on all of these great topics. It's an awesome resource right here.
So we put together this Google document. I think you can comment on it. Let us know if you can't, but if you have additional resources to add, please let us know. If you have questions about it, you can use the QR code on the screen. I'll bring it up again at the end. I wanted to make sure we showed it before the end of the hour in case people have to leave. The link is also in the chat, and hopefully we'll have a way to send this out at the end as well. So let's just super quickly, because we're going to go into a little ASL lesson. Let's do just a quick stretch. This is something for me, this is an access need. I'm someone with chronic pain. And so just having an opportunity to take a stretch, usually, if it's an hour and a half, halfway through, but we're at about an hour. So please stand up if you need to. I might disappear into the background here. Oops, there we go. But I think a recommended stretch here is really gentle neck stretching. If you've been staring at your screen all day, picking up your phone, staring down at it, you can bend and touch your toes if that's comfortable for you. I really like, for being on the computer all day, you can link your fingers together, turn your hands inside out, and then stretch away from your body. And sort of as you inhale, see if you can inhale your breath into your upper back and reach towards the screen and relax. And then since we're going to do some ASL, some finger stretches. So press your hand towards the screen, pull your fingers back, and switch hands. So if you do learn more ASL, you will find as you start to practice, your hands will get tired because there are a lot of muscles in there that are not used to doing lots of small fine-tuned motions. Monse, you want to just go ahead and jump right into that? I think one thing I'll start with is just that, bear in mind that if you learn ASL and you already speak English, this is the easiest language to learn, because if you can learn the 26 letters of the alphabet, any word that you don't know the sign for, you can spell. So I've been learning, it's really fun. There are some resources in the document that we shared about, there's a great app you can use to learn just a little bit every day. Just having these small bits, how are you? My name is, means so much to people to be able to just have those basics of communication and be in community with people. So let's see what you've got, Monse.
Yeah, I was just going to add, learning ASL is a process, a beautiful process, in fact, because for me, I think it teaches you two important things. And the first one is to be patient. To be patient with yourself, when you are learning ASL, it's you are kind of taking it all in. And the other thing is when you are doing it, you should be willing to do it somehow. And then it's a beautiful language, and the way it's approached is okay, the human being that is, ready to do it has to be willing to do it. But at the same time, it's it really teaches you to be passionate with yourself. I say it also as an exercise. Sometimes it's it teaches you so many things. Even if you are just learning how to use your hand to communicate with somebody who doesn't speak the same language as you, it kind of teaches you how to be passionate with the world, with yourself, and everything. So yeah, that's the part I appreciate about ISL. And I don't know if Monse felt the same way, but that's how I do.
And let's get videos on if you can. Even if you're in your office, we'll have more of us on the screen. It'll be fun, I promise. It's not scary. I love to see faces. This is great. And then you can actually get some feedback. You can see you're doing the same thing as everyone else. Amazing. Let's see here. Hi, Anna. Oh, hi, Yvonne. Nice to see ya. Okay, go ahead, Monse.
Okay, great. Today we're going to teach you a light little ASL lesson. We're just going to learn some of the basic things. We don't have a lot of time to do too much, but I just want you to take time today and learn it. There's no rush. It's just going to be some basic signs, and hopefully you can get started. We'll learn a few words together. So you've got to sign with whatever hand you're comfortable with. It can be right-handed or left-handed, whatever you feel good about. So first we're going to go through the alphabet in sign language. This is the letter A. B. C. D. See that? Look at that hand shape. Index finger up. The rest of the fingers coming down on the thumb. E. F. G. H. I. J. K. Make sure that hand shape, you got your thumb in between your two fingers, palm up. L. M is going to be these three fingers, come down, give your thumb a hug. N is your two fingers, so very similar. O. P. So P is the same as K, but now you're going to go palm down on it. Q. R. S. See, people get confused between A and S. On A, you've got the thumb on the outside. S, you've got the thumb in front of your fingers. This is T. U. U's kind of pretty easy to remember. And V, because it looks similar to how it truly is, the written form of the letter. W. X. Y. See the Y?
Mm-hmm.
And Z. Great. Thank you. Great job. Now you guys know the alphabet in American Sign Language. Okay, so now we're going to learn how to introduce yourself. My, palm on the chest. This is a sign for name. My name. Sign it with me. So my name is Monse.
Spell your own name.
Great. Excellent job.
Oh, I love this. We made these because we couldn't find any gifts for architect.
Yep, this is the sign for architect. Architect and architecture. Again, looking at the ruler that we use, it's based off that. This is how you ask somebody how they are. How are you? How you? And kind of bring your eyebrows together a little bit, make a curious face, and that portrays that it's a question you're asking rather than a statement. And then they would be the answers of how you're feeling that day. Having a good day? Okay, you feel good. It's the sign for good. This is fine. I feel fine. I'm sad. I feel sad today. And you got to make sure your face matches it. You got to put a sad face when you sign sad. Or you feel great. Tired. I feel tired today. Body, incorporate that body movement, the face looking tired, all of it. And finally, happy. And you've got to smile when you sign happy. So I am learning ASL. Point to yourself. I learn ASL. So see, you can use spelling. It's not always signing as far as a formal sign movement. You can also incorporate that alphabet into your communication. And if you forget or you don't know the sign for a word, you can always spell it and be able to communicate with deaf people. And here we go. ASL is beautiful. ASL is beautiful. Right? Isn't it?
You are beautiful. Me are beautiful. Look, you have so many words now. You can say, I am a beautiful architect.
You too.
Look at that in 7 minutes. Oh, sorry.
You can say, I am beautiful. I am a beautiful architect.
Architect. Great.
Then as you go along, and maybe one day you get there that someone tells you that you're beautiful, then you would say, thank you. Thank you. So when your colleague finishes giving a presentation, you can say, good job. And thank you. All right, that's it. You guys learned a lot about American Sign Language today. That was your first mini ASL lesson.
Woo, great job. I mean, great job, right? Okay, and so Caroline, your answer, I think it's whatever you're most comfortable with, right? Whichever hand, like if you're right-handed, typically you would use your right hand. So next up, okay, we do have some pre-prepared questions. We also had some questions in the chat, so we'll get to those. What I want to do is, now is your chance to revisit your annotate tool. So I'm sharing my screen. So please pull up your annotate tool. I'll read these off for people who are not looking at a screen. You can star your favorite question as I go through so that we know what to prioritize, because we have about 20 minutes left, and we can also open up to other questions. But so what we thought through were asking about your sort of a day in the life of imagining a deaf-led firm, what that would look like and feel like. Advice for architecture schools to make architecture more inclusive of deaf folks. What do deaf people wish you knew about being deaf? How to be a great colleague to deaf folks in architecture. How deaf space and design for deaf folks can be supportive of other folks' accessibility needs. Other, let's say, deaf-oriented book and TV recommendations, other media that might be helpful to just like learn more about deaf experience, mistakes that hearing people have made. What are like the dumbest, sorry, what are the most rude things that people have said to you? And what would we do better? What would be a better thing to say? Favorite deaf-friendly spaces. Maybe these are not even spaces designed to be deaf-friendly, but that are in just sort of the way they're laid out. And then I think this is a great one. What is your superpower as a deaf person? Oftentimes we think about disability as right? Like, what is the disadvantage? But I think Monse had a great way of describing this that she can talk about. That is about how there are assets, right? What do you gain? What does the deaf gain? So I see some stars arriving. We've got like 5. I think this is our top question with 5 stars, is the mistakes hearing people made. So I hear this as like, how can I do better, right? How can I avoid making deaf people embarrassed or uncomfortable or, you know, feel like not included? So let's start there. Then we'll answer our 2 questions I saw in the chat. So if you have other questions, make sure they show up in the chat so I can keep an eye on that. And then we'll go from there. So let's go with Mohammed first. And we'll try to keep these sort of short so we can get through a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
worst.
No, I think it's a pretty question. I love it. I love it. Because there is, I'll touch, but then one of the thing, I feel like one of the most important thing that I'm going to talk from a designing perspective, and especially from an emerging professional in this field, is that it's important to understand that when you communicate with a deaf person, it is going to be a challenge, but you also have to understand how to do it. Like one example is when you talk to a deaf person, you should not shoot, because they cannot hear you at first, and that's the first thing. Like no matter how loud you are talking to them, they won't be able to hear you. So I think one thing is you have to be aware of that. Don't shoot. Like I had this person I was working with, and then well, I mean, he got frustrated about an assignment, but what he did is he raised his voice, and I told him, all right, look, the way to do it is to communicate with me. Don't shoot, because I cannot hear you. When you shoot, it's not going to go anywhere. You can just be patient and try to write things down. And I understand that's the world we live in, but that's something that sometimes when you do it, it's really rude to deaf people, because the thing is they cannot hear the word at all. They cannot hear sound. So their way of communicating either through lips or, using a notebook or text or using sign language like Monty. So if you can learn that process, try to figure out a way to kind of communicate with them, but really don't shoot. I think that's not going to help at all. So that's I think that's one of the mistakes people make in the workplace that I feel like, more of them were aware of. Yeah.
Right. And for you, Mohammed, it's probably just more helpful if people enunciate, right? So if they speak clearly, like, and make sure the mouth is visible, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, because as human beings we have emotions, and emotions manifest in different ways. But at the end of the day, I am a human being like anybody else, right? So the emotion you feel are the same emotion I'm going to feel. I mean, I feel all these feelings like love, empathy, all that stuff. I feel it just like you. The only thing is like I cannot hear sound. So you have to be aware of that, and then not try to shoot, because if you shoot, it's not really going to help. And personally, I feel like when people shoot, there is emotion involved. So you can feel the emotion, and now even if you cannot hear them, you know that they are shooting or they are angry or whatever. So yeah, that's one of the things. Like if you are angry, there are ways to communicate it. Like Monse was showing how we could use the sign to communicate our emotions, but really you cannot do it with your voice, because I feel like it is really rude. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And Monse, what has been a challenge from hearing people, and what would you recommend for a better approach?
Oh.
Yes, oftentimes I will meet hearing people, and I'll have to, they ask me first off, can you read lips? And I'll say no. And I'll ask them the same thing back. Well, can you read my lips? Can you hear my voice? It's going to be the same answer. A deaf person might not be able to read lips. I'll tell you, 30% of individuals understand reading lips out of 70%. It's just more complex. Plus, the English language is so complex in its pronunciations and its sounds and mouth movements. So there are 2 words that you say might look the same on your lips, even though the words are different. And so then the deaf person has to try to differentiate which word did you say based on the mouth movements. That's very challenging. So that's something to keep in consideration, that might cause to confusion if they've chosen the wrong word to, guessing what you're trying to say. So another thing is, do not cover your mouth when you're speaking. If a person is trying to read your lips, do not cover your mouth with your hand. That just makes it all the more challenging for them. Another thing is masks are very difficult. It's hard to read a person's lips with masks on. If you have very small mouth movements when you are speaking and you don't enunciate, that can be hard to understand. But you can use gestures, like if you're saying hello, use your hand, say hello, but also do not super enunciate, because imagine how hard that would be to understand. If you're talking extra slow and too much, you wouldn't be able to understand that either. So you can write back and forth. That's another way if you do not know sign. And again, it's always okay to just ask. But if somebody asks me, do I lip read? That's a question I get often. The answer is no.
Yeah. And then I want to just go back to some of the, thank you. These are all really good tips for us to make sure that, we're doing our best. And one thing to keep in mind as hearing folks is that, yes, you may make mistakes. Don't let the fear of mistakes get in the way of befriending people, right? And being in community and trying. And that's something to keep in mind with all disability and accessibility experiences, right? Of course, we want to do it right and be respectful. And we also need to be humble, because unintentionally we can be excluding people by sort of going, oh, this is like hard. I don't know how to start the conversation. So try. I think that's a really big takeaway too. So one question I saw earlier that was about, this is from Catherine and Bend. Is there an issue with—
Add something else as well?
Yeah.
Oftentimes I might see people, I can see that they're scared. They don't know sign well, or they're afraid, I don't know sign perfectly, or I haven't signed in many years. It's okay. Learning and practicing is part of everyday life. Nobody's going to get it perfectly, and that's okay. But just trying your best and learning and going with it and saying, you know what, that's okay. It's fine. I'm not going to be perfect. And just get out there and do it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. So Catherine's question. Oh, go ahead, Mom.
Yeah, so I wanted to answer the second question about how much of a problem accents are for deaf people. So I want to be really clear with the fact that ASL is the basic language. It's the first language for deaf people, and lips reading come after. So it is secondary. So the first thing is if you need to communicate with a deaf person, I think even if I am a lip reader right now, I would encourage you to learn ISL, because that's the first way to communicate with a deaf person. And I mean, it can be a challenge, it can be hard, but that's the language for deaf folk. And I think that's something that you have to always understand. Lips come after, and I understand that it can be a challenge to communicate with accent and everything. But then again, yes, that's how it is. That's what I would say. Yeah, and in terms of lips reading, I think it depends on where you are living. Like I was living in South Carolina, and it was challenging for me with the Southern accent and reading people's lips. So it is hard as well. But yeah, I would encourage any person to learn ASL first, and that's the basic, and it's the most important thing. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Mohammed, is that your child? So cute. All right. I love when that happens personally.
No, it's my little sister.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
Yeah,
Okay. So cute, and just wants to participate. I love that. So a question here that I think is really important, I'll give a little bit of legal background, I guess, but the question is there an issue with firms not wanting to pay for accommodation? Because, right, for smaller firms, it's expensive, right? So I think that is something that, just for context, the ADA, for folks who are in school, so PSU has a legal obligation to provide accommodations because they receive federal funding to be an higher ed institution. Architecture firms as businesses do have an obligation to provide some accommodations in order for people to access their services. So if someone wanted to, it's more they're actually in cases of access to online food delivery. So Domino's Pizza had a lawsuit about not having an accessible ordering form online for low vision folks, because as something that provides services to the public, it should be accessible to everybody. But when it comes to employees, I think that there's this gray area, right, where if you hire someone, you do need to provide accommodations. But in the hiring process, oftentimes people with disabilities will get weeded out because it becomes apparent that there will be many more expectations for accommodations, right, which can be very expensive. I think that there there really are not like grants available to be able to cover the costs of accommodations. It's really just about if the company wants to support this particular employee and wants them to be a part of their team, they need to understand that the accommodation is a part of that person's experience. So do either of you want to add to that?
Yes, I can say that when I first started working at Holst, I had no idea about everything that was offered. And when I signed my contract, I was so surprised to see that they provided that support, and they told me, don't even worry about the budget. We will provide you an interpreter, 100%, whatever you need as far as accommodations go, it'll be provided for you. And that's something I thought about during my interview. I said, oh my gosh, well, I'm deaf. Maybe they won't want to pay for an interpreter. But they wanted to hire a deaf designer, and they were impressed with my skill level, and they saw I worked hard and I studied well, and they were willing to invest the effort into what it took to get me supported with communication access via interpreters and anything else I might need. So that was just so great. They were so flexible and have been flexible to, as well as providing whatever is needed to have a deaf person at their firm. I was also reading about DEI. If suppose you have a goal to be a DEI in a firm, consider the person who, and this is a great example of someone who has a disability. If you hire a deaf individual at their firm, that's great too. Just because they have a disability doesn't mean that they should be not considered for hire. If a person's deaf or hard of hearing, or deaf plus another disability, or whatever their disability is, it would be a great asset to your firm to hire that person with appropriate accommodations. They can do anything. And it's important to invest in the development of your firm and show others that your firm does support these individuals with disabilities.
Yeah, great. Another question we had that is about design is if there are recommendations for housing, because I think a lot of these Gallaudet examples come from sort of public spaces or commercial spaces. This is also from Catherine. So awareness is limited to flashing smoke or fire alarms and like visible doorbells. And you don't need to apologize about being ignorant, because we're all here to learn, right? This is just
Yes.
Oh, Mahat, yeah, you can jump in here. Recommendations for housing.
Yeah, actually about housing, I think that's very important. You are learning, but one thing to keep in mind is that those can be traffic sometimes. They can be, especially when there is a fire in a building and the deaf person doesn't know, or is not, aware of the things that are happening when they are there. And that happened to me back in 21st when I was living in South Carolina. So when I was in my program, I had 4 roomers. It's a funny story, but then they were running building fire day at 4 a.m. Like, can you imagine somebody getting woke up at 4 a.m. and I was not aware really. No. So what will happen is that we had 2 fire day, and for every single one of them, I did not know. So I was lucky that I had a roommate who really cared about me and was a friend. So he knocked onto my door and he opened the door and he woke me up. So you can imagine, like, if I locked my door, I could not even be able to hear the person knocking. So yeah, I think sometimes we don't think about it, but they really have a big impact and they are important. And so it's important to think about those little things, like a fire alarm and stuff. They matter a lot. They do. I'm speaking from experience as a deaf person, and it happened to me, so I can relate. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, safety should be the first thing we think about. But then I think another way to frame this is, what do you do in your own homes that make it more supportive of your needs as a deaf person? And I saw Monse, you got started, so go ahead.
Yes, I can also add to that too. As I grew up in a deaf school, they already had us prepared. Well, first of all, the buildings themselves were deaf friendly, and we had plenty of fire drills and practices on how to evacuate safely. So I won't go into that story. It's long, but what I can say is the flashing lights, it's important to have, but also if a person is speaking, like in a school building or in a business, there's an intercom and someone is giving verbal directions, all the deaf people there are not going to know what's going on or what's being said. So it's important to keep that in mind. If there's any verbal directions going on an intercom, how are you going to relay that information to a deaf person? What if a deaf individual is stuck in an elevator? How do they communicate, and how do you get information to that person through the elevator if they're stuck? So there is that. It would be good to have a screen in an elevator or a way so you can write back and forth so that that person could communicate if they are stuck in an elevator, which is something that has happened, and it's not a really great experience. I really avoid elevators because of that, just to let you know.
Yeah, the safety in elevators is an interesting piece. I'm also wondering about just like comfort in your home. Are there things just in your own apartment? I wonder, what has technology done for us? Are there like visible doorbells? What would be in like a brand new building that could be really beneficial? Like a concierge service screen near your front door that lets you know that a package has arrived, or those are things that could help kind of anybody, but I'm just kind of brainstorming, wondering, because I can think of a lot of things.
I mean, it depends, because also like when we are talking about it, we are also talking about resources, because there are better buildings within one community, and it's not always like you are going to end up living into one. And what we also know that is that the more accommodation a building has, the higher the rent price. So that's the world we live in. So that's another thing. So, and I think for me right now, I think we have a doorbell at home, we do. But honestly, it's not helpful to me. But the way for it to be helpful is if you are putting a doorbell, you have to make sure that it is kind of connected with the technology. And the other thing is that for it to work, you have to be aware of the tenant in the building. Like you have to ask them, do they need accommodation? So if they tell you they are deaf and there is a doorbell, you have to make sure that at last there is a remote that is connected to the doorbell, so they can have it handy anytime they are in the house. And we have that kind of technology now. So there is, I will not say there is any excuse, but then it is available out here. So yeah, it's one way to look at things. But also I understand that it depends between, resources and how those are shared within communities. Yeah.
One thing I did think of too, that's just sort of a general design, and oh my gosh, it's 11:29. So is about different lighting, and just like Monse talked about in, shared spaces, is not just overhead lighting, having options for like dimmer lighting and being able to choose your different lighting options in your house. I know a lot of deaf folks get visual fatigue at the end of the day just from lots of, paying attention and looking at screens and all of that. So just having control over your space, blinds and lighting and those sorts of things can help. But it's time to wrap it up, unfortunately. So if people can stay for 1 minute, we'll say, what is your deaf superpower? And we'll end it on that, and hope that all of you can join us at happy hour tonight so that we can chat more about this. So deaf superpower in 20 seconds each.
Yeah, Monse, let's have your first superpower, and I'll go after you.
Yes, I'm flexible. I'm able to, go with whatever comes my way as far as making appointments and getting accommodations taken care of. And I just stick with it. And I think a lot of people say, oh, deaf can't do this or that. I want to get rid of that word can't and say we can, because there's so many positives about being deaf. For example, sign language. I can roll down my window in a car or in my house next to somebody way across the way, and we can see each other. You can't do that with a hearing person. You can't hear someone from that far away. I think that's pretty cool. There's just so much you can do, and there's so many different ways that you can look at being deaf and make that a positive, beneficial thing.
Yeah.
And sign language is just beautiful.
Well, yeah. I echo your word. I echo your word, and I feel the same way you feel about, how I look at the world from a deaf perspective. And I feel like that's also my superpower, because at the end of the day, I mean, mostly I'm just going to talk about something that, I feel like is really inspiring, just looking at the work that both of you and me are trying to do somehow. Like, we are also involved with the NOMA, which come with our identity about, I will just say, deaf individual. We are more than that, We are also community member, and we are part of all the community that, out here. We are part of this world. So I think for me, my superpower would be being able to, embrace change. I like it change. I like to embrace it. So I think that's like my superpower. And not really being afraid of change. And I feel like I wish more people in the world were kind of, willing to embrace change, because it's something that at the end of the day, you cannot stop. It is going to happen regardless. So I feel like as a deaf person, I was able early on to be able to embrace it. In a way that I would say, yeah, it has been beautiful. So yeah, that's my superpower, I would say.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We can all say thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you.
job.
Thank you.
And hopefully we will see you all later.
Okay, yeah. I have do you have any last word?
A last word? Go for it.
Okay, thank you guys for doing this. Honestly, I want to close this future vision. Great not because I was really inspired by every single session that we had, and this being the final one, I was really excited to be able to share my experience as a deaf individual. And I know that at the end of the day, there are still going to be challenges out in the world. But just for you in this place to know that Monty and myself and Hannah are available if you have a question about accessibility resource, and we are going to be here to help you in terms of that. And the best way we know how, and still it is not going to be perfect, but is the world we will live in. So really thank you for being in this space, and also thank you for everybody who was here and was really passionate with this. And I know it's a slow process to learn about somebody else's story, but thank you for giving us. That's the one thing that I remind myself of, giving grass and being empathetic about the world, because at the end of the world is not going to be a beautiful place to live in, but we have to make the best out of it and try to create that same experience for other people the best way we know how. So yeah, we are in a work in progress, and I hope that there's a session where helpful and inspiring to all of you. And I wish that we are going to keep on doing this work, because it does not stop today, it does not stop tomorrow. It's going to keep happening. So thank you all for that.
Yeah, thank you. Great job, everyone. We'll see you. I see your comments about sharing other stuff in the resources. I will try to give you some tips on interpreters, at least I know in the Portland area. Any other questions, hopefully I'll make sure my email's in there. You can reach out. We do want to help make everything inclusive, right?
Yeah, I just want to lastly, again, thank our sponsors for this content and supporting us. This has been an amazing couple of days of presentation. I also want to tell you all how much I've learned here today, which is enlightening and humbling for me, and invite everyone to come again to the DLR in-person reception. We will have interpreters available on site to make conversations accessible to everyone. So please join us.
Yay. All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon and a great
Thank you.